Right now, someone is controlling your mind, and you don't even realize it. Not by force, not by power, but by something much quieter. A small change in their tone, a late reply, a moment that feels slightly different, and suddenly your whole inner world shifts. You start thinking about them again and again. Your mood changes. Your peace disappears without any clear reason, and it feels like they did this to you. But look deeper, they're not inside your mind. They didn't take control. You gave it to them through your attention, your thoughts, your meaning. And the most dangerous part is this: you've been doing it so naturally that it feels normal. But once you see how this hidden control really works, you stop reacting. You take your mind back, and nothing affects you the same way again. You didn't lose control, you quietly gave them meaning. It never starts with something big. It starts with a very small moment, so small that you don't even notice it at first. Someone says something simple, or maybe they don't say anything at all. Maybe their tone feels slightly different. Maybe their reply comes late. Maybe their behavior changes just a little. And in that moment, nothing has really happened yet. But inside you, something begins. Your mind doesn't let it pass. It holds on to it. It goes back to that moment again and again, trying to understand it. You start asking yourself questions you didn't ask before. What did they mean by that? Why did they say it like that? Did something change? And slowly, without realizing, your mind starts building meaning around it. Not facts, not truth, just meaning. Meaning they never clearly said. Meaning they may have never even thought about. But your mind fills the gap, because the mind doesn't like confusion. It doesn't like not knowing. So it creates answers, even when there are none. And the more you think about it, the more real it begins to feel. What started as something small now feels important. Now it feels personal. Now it feels like it matters. And this is the moment everything begins to shift. Because once it feels personal, your emotions follow. You start feeling uneasy, a little restless, a little heavy inside. And you don't even realize why your mood has changed. But it has. Because now, you are not reacting to what actually happened. You are reacting to what you think it means. And that meaning is coming from your mind, not from them. This is where control quietly begins. Not in their action, not in their words, but in your interpretation. Because the moment you attach emotional meaning to someone's behavior, you give it power over you. You give it importance. You give it space inside your mind. And once something lives in your mind, it doesn't stay small. It grows. You think about it when you're alone. You replay it when you're quiet. You carry it with you, even when nothing is happening anymore. And now, without them doing anything new, you are already affected. Your peace is no longer steady. Your thoughts are no longer calm. And the most important part is this: they didn't do this to you. Your mind did. Not because something is wrong with you, but because you didn't see it happening. You didn't notice the moment you gave that meaning. You didn't question the story your mind started creating. You simply followed it. And that's how control becomes invisible. Because it doesn't feel like control. It feels like you're just thinking. It feels like you're just trying to understand. But in reality, you are slowly giving your power away. And once that happens, they don't need to control you anymore. They don't need to say anything. They don't need to do anything. Because your thoughts will keep doing it for them. Your mind replays what it fears until it feels real. Your mind has one quiet habit, and most of the time, you don't even notice it. It cannot sit comfortably in uncertainty. It cannot stay calm when something feels unclear. The moment something doesn't make sense, The moment something feels slightly off, your mind starts searching. It wants answers. It wants clarity. It wants to feel in control again. But instead of waiting, instead of staying still, it starts creating movement inside you. It goes back to the same moment again. It replays the same situation again. It asks the same questions again. What did they really mean? Why did they say it like that? Why did they act different? Did something change? And at first, it feels like you are just thinking. It feels like you are just trying to understand. But slowly, something deeper begins to happen. Those thoughts don't leave. They come back again and again and again. Not because they are important, but because your mind is afraid. Afraid of being ignored. Afraid of losing something. Afraid of not knowing where you stand. And fear has a pattern. It repeats. It doesn't stop after one thought. It circles. It loops. It pulls you back into the same mental space. And the more your mind repeats something, the more familiar it becomes. And the more familiar it becomes, the more real it starts to feel, even if nothing actually changed, even if nothing actually happened, even if the truth is completely different. Your mind doesn't need reality to feel something. It only needs repetition, because repetition creates belief. You think about it once, it feels small. You think about it 10 times, it feels serious. You think about it all day, it feels true. And now, your emotions begin to follow. Something that was never confirmed. Your chest feels heavy. Your mood shifts. Your energy drops. And when you look back, you think something real caused this. But it didn't. It was a thought, repeated so many times, that it turned into a feeling. And that feeling started controlling your state. This is how you get trapped without even realizing it. Not by what actually happened, but by what your mind keeps replaying. Because your mind is not always showing you truth. Sometimes, it is only showing you your fear in different forms, again and again, until you believe it. And once you believe it, your body reacts. Your emotions react, your behavior changes, all because of something that started as a small, uncertain thought. And now it feels heavy. Now it feels real. Now it feels like something you cannot ignore. But the truth is simple and powerful. Just because your mind repeats something does not mean it is true. It only means you didn't stop it. It only means you kept following it. And the moment you begin to see this clearly, the pattern starts to weaken, because repetition only has power when you stay unconscious to it. But once you notice it, once you see the loop, once you understand that your mind is replaying fear, not reality, something begins to change. The thoughts may still come, but they don't feel as strong. They don't feel as convincing. They don't pull you the same way, because now you are not inside the loop. You are watching it, and that one shift is where your freedom quietly begins. Your attention is your power, and you're giving it away. There is something you use every single day without realizing how powerful it is. Your attention. It feels small. It feels normal. It feels like nothing important. But your attention is your energy. It is your focus. It is your life moving in a direction. And wherever your attention goes, your inner world begins to follow. Right now, your attention is not fully with you. It is somewhere else, on someone else, on what they said, what they didn't say, what they might be thinking. And slowly, without noticing, you start drifting away from yourself. You could be sitting alone, but your mind is not with you. It is replaying them. It is waiting for them. It is imagining them. And this is how power begins to leave you, quietly. Because attention is not just thinking. Attention is connection. The more attention you give someone, the more connected your mind becomes to them. Even if they are not there. Even if they are not thinking about you. Even if they are doing nothing at all. Your attention keeps them alive in your mind. And now, your mood begins to depend on something outside you. You check your phone, not because you need to, but because your mind is waiting. You think about their response, even when there is no response. You feel a shift inside you, based on something that hasn't even happened. And this is where control becomes invisible, because no one is forcing you. No one is asking you. You are doing it on your own. You are giving your attention again and again without questioning it. And the more you do this, the more your power moves away from you, because attention is like a light. Wherever you shine it, that place becomes stronger. And right now, you are shining it outside instead of within. So your thoughts about them become stronger. Your emotions connected to them become stronger. Your dependence on them becomes stronger. And your connection with yourself becomes weaker. You stop noticing your own state. You stop feeling your own presence. You stop being centered, because your mind is always somewhere else. And this is how you slowly lose control. Not in one big moment, but in small moments, repeated throughout your day. Every time you go back to them in your mind, you give a little more away. Every time you check, wait, imagine, you step a little further away from yourself. And the dangerous part is this. It feels normal. It feels like you care. It feels like it matters. But look deeper. If your attention is not in your control, then your peace is not in your control. Because your attention decides what you feel. It decides what grows inside you. It decides what stays in your mind. And if someone can hold your attention without even being present, then they don't need to control you. You have already given them access. But the moment you see this clearly, something shifts. You begin to notice where your attention is going. You begin to catch yourself before you drift too far. You begin to bring it back, slowly, gently, again and again, not by force, but by awareness. And as your attention returns to you, your power returns with it. Your thoughts become quieter. Your emotions become lighter. Your presence becomes stronger. Because now, your attention is no longer scattered. It is yours again. And when your attention is yours, your mind becomes yours too. You're not reacting to them. You're reacting to a story you created. What is hurting you right now is not always what actually happened. It is what your mind is telling you about what happened. There is a big difference between the two, but most of the time, you don't see it. Something simple takes place. They reply late. They sound a little different. They act in a way you didn't expect. In reality, it is just a moment, just an action, just something small. But your mind doesn't leave it as it is. It begins to build around it. It begins to create a story, a meaning, a conclusion, and slowly, that story becomes stronger than the reality itself. You start thinking, maybe something is wrong. Maybe they don't feel the same. Maybe something changed. Maybe you did something, and none of these are facts. No one told you this. No one confirmed it. But your mind fills the silence with its own answers, because silence makes the mind uncomfortable. So it creates something to hold on to. And that something becomes a story. And once the story is created, your emotions begin to follow it. You feel hurt without being hurt. You feel rejected without being rejected. You feel distant without any real distance. Because your emotions are not reacting to reality, they are reacting to the story your mind created. And the more you think about it, the more detailed the story becomes. You add small details. You connect past moments. You imagine future outcomes. And now, something that never truly happened starts to feel heavy inside you. It feels real. It feels personal. It feels like truth. But it is not truth. It is interpretation. And interpretation, when left unexamined, becomes belief. And belief shapes your entire emotional state. This is how you slowly lose yourself. Not to what people do, but to what your mind thinks they mean. And the dangerous part is this: you trust your thoughts. You don't question them. You assume that because you feel something, it must be real. But feelings don't always come from truth. Sometimes they come from imagination. Sometimes they come from fear. Sometimes they come from a story you didn't even realize you were writing. And once you are inside that story, everything starts to look like it confirms it. Every small action feels like proof. Every silence feels like meaning. Every delay feels like rejection. And now, you are no longer seeing clearly. You are seeing through the lens of a story that your mind created and your emotions accepted. But the moment you slow down, the moment you step back, the moment you begin to question what you're thinking, something starts to break. You begin to see the gap between what actually happened and what your mind added to it. You begin to notice how much of your pain came from assumptions, from imagined meanings, from conclusions that were never real. And in that moment, you stop reacting blindly. You stop believing everything your mind says. You stop letting every thought turn into a feeling, because now you see it. You see the story forming. You see the pattern repeating. And instead of getting pulled into it, you stay outside it. You observe it. You let it pass. And that is where your control begins to return. Because the moment you stop reacting to the story, you reconnect with reality. And reality is always lighter, calmer, and much simpler than the story your mind tries to create. What feels like connection is slowly turning into dependence. At the beginning, it feels harmless. It feels natural. It feels like you care. You think about them. You notice their presence. You feel something when they speak to you. And in your mind, you call it connection. You tell yourself this is normal. This is what it means to be attached, to like someone, to feel close. And at first, it really does feel warm. It feels meaningful. It feels like something good is growing inside you. But slowly, very quietly, something begins to change. The feeling is no longer light. It starts to carry weight. You begin to notice that your mood is no longer steady. It moves, depending on them. If they give attention, you feel good. If they pull away, even slightly, you feel something drop inside you. And you don't question it, because you still believe this is connection. But look deeper. Real connection does not disturb your peace. Real connection does not make you anxious in silence. Real connection does not make you overthink every small change. What you are feeling now is something else. It is dependence. And dependence is very different, because dependence means your inner state is no longer yours. It is tied to someone else. You begin to wait, without realizing you are waiting. You check your phone, without realizing you are expecting something. You replay their words, trying to feel the same feeling again. And slowly, your peace becomes conditional. Conditional on their reply. Conditional on their tone. Conditional on their presence. And this is where control becomes stronger. Because now, you are not choosing how you feel. You are reacting. You are responding to what they give, or what they don't give. And the most dangerous part is this: you don't see it as a problem. You see it as care. You see it as importance. You see it as something meaningful. But anything that takes your peace away from you is not giving you something. It is taking something from you, because dependence always brings fear. Fear of losing them. Fear of being ignored. Fear of not being enough. Fear of change. And once fear enters, your mind loses its stability. You start holding tighter, thinking more, reacting faster. And now, even small things feel big. Even silence feels loud. Even distance feels painful. Not because the situation is heavy, but because your dependence made it heavy. And this is how you slowly lose control. Not in one moment, but in many small moments where you stopped standing on your own. You leaned your peace on someone else. You placed your emotional balance in their hands, without even asking them, without even realizing it. And now, your mind moves when they move. Your emotions shift when they shift. Your peace disappears when they are not there. But the truth is simple and powerful. Connection should make you feel calm. Dependence makes you feel unstable. Connection allows you to stay yourself. Dependence makes you lose yourself. And the moment you begin to see this clearly, something inside you starts to wake up. You begin to notice when your peace is leaving you. You begin to notice when you are waiting, expecting, depending, and slowly, you start pulling yourself back. Not by pushing them away, but by returning to yourself. You stop letting your mood depend on their actions. You stop giving your inner balance to something outside you. You begin to stand on your own again. And as that happens, the weight begins to lift. The fear begins to fade. The overthinking begins to slow down. Because now, you are no longer depending. You are simply aware. And in that awareness, your power begins to return. You don't notice the control, because it builds in silence. Control does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself. It does not feel like something is being taken from you. It builds in the quietest way possible, so quietly that you don't even realize anything is changing. At first, it is just a thought, a small reaction, a moment you replay for a few seconds longer than you should, and it feels harmless. It feels like nothing important. So you let it pass, without questioning it. But it doesn't really pass. It stays. And the next time something similar happens, your mind reacts a little faster, a little deeper, a little stronger. Now you think a bit more. You feel a bit more. You hold on to it a bit longer. And again, it still feels normal. Because the change is so small, you don't see it. This is how the pattern begins. Quietly, one thought becomes a habit. One reaction becomes a cycle. One person becomes a constant in your mind. And, slowly, without any clear moment of decision, your inner state starts shifting. You begin to notice that your thoughts return to them more often. You begin to notice that your mood changes more easily. You begin to notice that your mind doesn't stay as calm as it used to. But even then, you don't stop, because it doesn't feel like control. It feels like you are just thinking. It feels like you are just feeling something. It feels like this is just how things are now. And that is what makes it dangerous. Because real control is not obvious. Real control hides inside repetition. It hides inside patterns you don't question. It hides inside thoughts you believe without awareness. And by the time you finally feel the weight, by the time your mind feels heavy, restless, constantly occupied, the pattern is already strong. Now your attention returns to them without effort. Now your emotions shift without warning. Now your peace disappears without a clear reason. And you don't know when it started. You don't know how it became this way. Because it didn't happen in one moment. It happened in many small moments that you never stopped to see. This is how control builds in silence. Not through force, but through unnoticed repetition. And the more unconscious you are, the deeper it grows. Because anything you don't notice, you cannot stop. Anything you don't question, you automatically follow. And anything you keep repeating becomes part of you. Until one day, you are no longer choosing your thoughts. You are no longer choosing your reactions. They are happening on their own, triggered by someone else, even when they are not there. But the moment you begin to slow down, the moment you start paying attention, the moment you begin to observe your own patterns, something powerful begins to happen. You start seeing the small moments. The moments where your mind grabs something and holds it. The moments where your attention drifts without you deciding. The moments where your emotions shift before you even understand why. And once you see these moments, the silence breaks. Because now, it is no longer hidden. Now, it is visible. And what becomes visible begins to lose its power. Because control needs you to stay unaware. It needs you to keep moving without noticing. It needs you to keep repeating without questioning. But awareness changes everything. Awareness brings light into the pattern. Awareness slows everything down. Awareness gives you a choice again. And once you have a choice, control is no longer automatic. It begins to weaken. It begins to fade. Because now, you are no longer asleep inside the pattern. You are awake within it. And that is the moment your mind starts coming back to you. The moment you truly see it, the illusion starts collapsing. There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, where everything begins to change. Not when the situation changes, not when the other person changes, but when you see clearly what has been happening inside you all along. Until now, you were inside the experience. You were inside the thoughts, inside the emotions, inside the reactions. Everything felt real, immediate, personal. But the moment you step back, even slightly, something shifts. You begin to notice your thoughts instead of becoming them. You begin to see the pattern instead of being pulled by it. And that one small shift changes everything. Because what once felt like truth now starts to look like a process. You see how your mind takes a small moment and builds something bigger. You see how it repeats, how it adds meaning, how it creates a story. And for the first time, you are not lost inside it. You are watching it. And when you watch something clearly, it cannot control you the same way. Because illusion only survives when you are inside it. When you are unconscious, when you are following without seeing. But awareness brings distance. Not physical distance, but mental clarity. And in that clarity, the illusion begins to weaken. The thoughts still come. The feelings still appear, but they don't feel as heavy. They don't feel as convincing. They don't pull you as deeply as before. Because now, a part of you knows. A part of you sees what is real and what is created. You begin to question things you never questioned before. Is this actually happening? Or is my mind building it? Is this feeling coming from reality or from repetition? Is this truth or just a story I kept believing? And these questions are powerful because they interrupt the pattern. They break the automatic flow. They stop the illusion from growing stronger. And slowly, what once felt overwhelming starts losing its weight. What once felt urgent starts feeling distant. What once controlled your mood starts fading into the background. Not because you forced it to stop, but because you saw it clearly. And clarity dissolves illusion. You don't have to fight your thoughts. You don't have to push your emotions away. You don't have to control everything. You only need to see, because the moment you truly see, without denying, without escaping, the illusion cannot survive in the same way. It begins to collapse on its own. like something that only existed in darkness, now exposed to light. And in that moment, you feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Space. A gap between you and your thoughts. A gap between what happens and how you react. And inside that gap, there is freedom. You are no longer forced to follow every thought. You are no longer pulled by every emotion. You are no longer trapped inside every story your mind creates. You have a choice again. You can pause. You can observe. You can let things pass without holding on to them. And that is where your power begins to return, not in controlling the outside world, but in no longer being controlled by your inner patterns. Because once you truly see, you cannot go back to being completely unaware. You cannot fully believe the illusion again, even if it tries to come back, even if the thoughts return. Something inside you stays awake. Something inside you remembers, and that quiet awareness becomes your strength. Because now, the illusion may still appear, but it no longer owns you. Detachment isn't distance. It's taking back your inner stability. Detachment is often misunderstood. You hear the word, and you think it means walking away, becoming cold, stopping yourself from feeling. But that is not detachment. That is avoidance. Real detachment is something much deeper, much calmer, much stronger. It is not about pushing people away. It is about pulling yourself back into your center, back into your awareness, back into a place where your peace does not depend on what someone else does. Because right now, your inner state is moving too easily. A small change in someone's behavior, and your mood shifts. A delay, and your thoughts begin to race. A silence, and your emotions become heavy. This is not because you are weak. It is because your stability is placed outside of you, and anything placed outside can be shaken. Detachment begins the moment you stop doing that. The moment you stop giving your inner balance to something you cannot control. It is not about caring less. It is about holding yourself more. You can still feel. You can still talk. You can still connect. But you don't let your mind run away with every small change. You don't let your thoughts build stories you immediately believe. You don't let your emotions pull you into reactions you don't understand. Instead, you stay. You stay aware. You stay grounded. You stay with yourself, even when something inside you wants to run. And that is where stability begins. Because stability is not about controlling the outside. It is about not losing yourself inside. When someone changes, you notice it, but you don't collapse. When something feels unclear, you observe it, but you don't rush to conclusions. When a thought appears, you see it, but you don't follow it blindly. You give yourself space, and in that space, your mind becomes quieter. Your emotions become lighter. Your presence becomes stronger. This is detachment, not distance from people, but distance from unconscious reactions. Not absence of feeling, but clarity within feeling. You begin to realize that you don't need constant reassurance to feel okay. You don't need constant attention to feel stable. You don't need everything to go your way to stay at peace. Because your peace is no longer built on conditions. It is built on awareness. And awareness does not shake easily. Awareness does not panic. Awareness does not chase. It simply sees and stays. And when you stay with yourself like this, something powerful happens. You stop overreacting. You stop overthinking. You stop losing yourself in every small moment. Because now, your foundation is within you, not in someone else's behavior, not in someone else's presence, not in someone else's attention, and that changes everything. Because now, even if things are uncertain, you remain steady. Even if someone pulls away, you remain centered. Even if your mind tries to create stories, you don't get lost in them. You see them, and you let them pass. And in that state, you feel something you didn't feel before. A quiet strength. A calm that doesn't depend on anything. A sense of control that doesn't come from force, but from clarity. This is what it means to take your inner stability back. Not by controlling others, not by forcing yourself to stop feeling, but by no longer abandoning yourself in the process. Because the moment you stop abandoning yourself, you stop needing others to hold you together. And from that place, you don't just feel better, you become unshaken. And that is real freedom. No one ever controlled you. You just forgot you were in charge. At the end of everything, there is one truth that changes the way you see it all. No one ever truly had control over you. It only felt that way. It only looked that way. But the control was never outside. It was built inside, slowly, quietly. Through moments you didn't notice. You gave meaning without questioning it. You followed thoughts without seeing where they came from. You gave your attention without realizing its value. You allowed stories to grow, and then you believed them. And step by step, without any clear decision, you moved away from yourself. Not because you are weak, not because something is wrong with you, but because you forgot something very simple and very powerful. You forgot that you were always in charge of your inner world. You forgot that thoughts are not commands. You forgot that emotions are not always truth. You forgot that attention is something you choose, not something you lose. And when you forget these things, it starts to feel like someone else is controlling you. It starts to feel like your mood depends on them, like your peace depends on them, like your thoughts belong to them. But that was never the reality. It was only the result of unconscious patterns repeating over time. And now, something is different. Now you see it. Now you understand how it was happening. Now you can recognize the moment your mind starts drifting. And this is where everything begins to return. Not all at once, not in one big change, but in small, powerful shifts. You pause before reacting. You notice your thoughts before believing them. You bring your attention back, instead of letting it run. And slowly, piece by piece, your mind comes back to you. Your thoughts become quieter, not because they stopped, but because you stopped following every one of them. Your emotions become steadier, not because life became perfect, but because you stopped letting every small thing disturb you. Your presence becomes stronger, because now you are here, not lost in someone else, not trapped in a story, not pulled by every feeling. You are with yourself, and that changes everything. Because when you are with yourself, you don't need to chase control. You don't need to force calm. You don't need to depend on anyone to feel okay. You already are. And the people who once affected you deeply, the ones who could shift your mood, disturb your peace, take over your thoughts, they begin to lose that power, not because they changed anything, but because you did. Because now, you are no longer giving your mind away. You are no longer handing over your attention without awareness. You are no longer believing every story your mind creates. You are choosing. And that is what being in charge really means. Not controlling everything outside, but choosing how you respond inside. And once you return to that place, once you remember that your mind belongs to you, there is something you feel again, a quiet confidence, a calm strength, a sense of control that doesn't depend on anyone. And in that moment, you realize something you had forgotten for a long time. You were never powerless. You were only unaware. And now that you are aware, your mind is yours again. And now, Just pause for a moment. Look at how everything changed. Not outside, but inside you. The same people exist. The same situations exist. Nothing out there suddenly became perfect, but something within you became clear. You're no longer reacting the same way. You're no longer chasing every thought. You're no longer giving your peace away so easily. And that is where real change begins. Not when the world changes, but when you stop letting it control your inner state. Because the truth is, your peace was never out there. It was never in someone's words, or their attention, or their behavior. It was always within you, just covered by noise, by stories, by unconscious patterns you didn't see before. And now you see them. Now you understand them. Now you don't have to follow them anymore. Let your thoughts come, but don't hold them. Let your emotions rise, but don't get lost in them. Let people be who they are, without losing who you are. Because you don't need to control anything outside to feel stable inside. You don't need answers for everything to feel at peace. You don't need someone else to act a certain way to stay calm. You just need awareness. You just need presence. You just need to stay with yourself instead of leaving yourself. And the more you do that, the quieter your mind becomes. The lighter your heart feels. The stronger your presence grows, until one day, the things that once disturbed you no longer reach you in the same way. Not because you became distant, but because you became steady. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped losing yourself. And that is a different kind of power. A quiet power, a calm power, a power that doesn't need to prove anything or force anything. It simply exists. And now it exists within you.